Hello, I'm Martin Kirby and these are the Mother's Garden podcasts. Every week I will tell you what is happening on our Mediterranean farm, the creatures, the colours of this valley, my perspective. Maybe you love and need nature like me or just need help in getting to sleep. Either way, you are most welcome. If you enjoy the podcasts, please share, and all feedback is most appreciated. So, come on, walk with me. Monday, the 18th of October, Mother's Garden. Thanks for joining me. I'm just making my way to the end of the barn. We have one of those extraordinarily beautiful days. Lots of cloud, threatening rain, but shafts of light from a pool of blue above my head. And that gives that rarefied light, doesn't it? That gives a lot of detail and perspective. So I'm going to try and give you a weekly perspective on life here at Mother's Garden. But first I'm doing something not so pleasant. At the end of our barn, we have the farmhouse, which is more than 200 years old, and with the old render falling off, it's beautiful and charming, but some would say untidy. And then we have a dry stone barn next to it, attached. And at the far end of that, outside, I put a concrete pad down some years ago, and it's become a dumping ground for recycled bits and bobs. I've got an enamel shower tray, 2 old sinks, tiles, numerous tiles, some assortment of modern brick, but even more huge pieces of old brick which I use for walls, and I've got blocks of stone that I keep for paving. Oh gosh, it's classic me. It's a bit of a dumping ground, but also among it are the crates which I'm bringing out, clearing, ready for harvest. Right, I better get on, but I'll talk to you and then we'll go into the woods. Now, what on earth is this? Oh, good Lord. So untidy. Key task of the day is to get the feed bucket for the pony sorted out. And then I'm going to move on from here into the woods and tell you what has been happening here of late at Mother's Garden. The weather is on the turn. I know from family in the United Kingdom, from Edinburgh and further south, that obviously the onset of autumn is already turning towards winter, thinking of winter. So here it's remained incredibly mild actually. The days have quite warm, t-shirt time, and we haven't had any high winds or anything to rob the walnut trees of their golden leaves that are on the turn, or the Virginia creeper of its startling red. But the nights are cold and dipping down to actually 2 degrees to 0, and the sense is, of course, that winter is almost here. We hope it holds off, because in a matter of 3 weeks we'll be harvesting the olives and working at the mill. Around me it's quite still. There are blackcaps moving around in the trees, beautiful warblers, and the robin was up this morning sitting on one of the walnuts right at the top, giving us its version of autumn song. So I'm going to head into the woods now, because there's something I'm looking for, evidence of badger. We put the night cameras up for the first time in weeks last weekend. We've got a wonderful sighting of a boar badger, male badger. So let's go and see if we can find any more, and I'll talk to you when I'm deep in the woods. Can't tell you, let's settle ourselves here. Oof. Okay, I'm not far from where the night camera was, and right next to a pine and an oak, both of which snapped off in the snows last January. given that it was a hard winter, I'm hoping we don't have too much snow this year, but we shall see. It is the way of the world right now. None of us know what's coming next. Anyway, to the badger, because we know we've got badgers here. I haven't managed to trace the set. It's off our land, I think, but one of the main paths is across through a pine copse, down into the Barrank, the big, huge, deep ditch, onto our land through the Holm Oaks and north. They get cut through over to the vineyard and on. Extraordinary creatures, of course, and I'm just curious. I'm slightly anxious, both of us are, Maggie and I, because they're omnivores. They eat. You will know this, I'm sure, most of you, but they'll eat worms, and of course they'll eat fruits as well. So both plant and other animals' meat. But one of the things they prey on are tortoises, and we do have those here. So it's sort of a mixed blessing, and we just hope that all keeps in balance. The night camera also picked up, obviously, wild boar coming through and rabbits, and the badgers may well be after those with their powerful claws going straight down into warrens to get the young of the rabbits. The rabbits have multiplied so much in the last couple of years, and that's obviously affected the food chain and the things we see around us. As for the badgers, well, they're fascinating, aren't they, really? Powerful creatures that can weigh up to about 20 kilos, nearly a metre in length in their maturity, and live up to possibly 15 years. And although I suppose in literature, I don't know if you've read Wind in the Willows and such things, but, Mr. Badger was quite solitary and disliked society. I think he was described as being grumpy. But they are quite sociable, actually. They can be. And they can retain a set within the community of badger for scores and scores of years. They reuse and develop a set. I'm surprised, actually, in this deep barrank, this deep gully that runs up. I haven't explored the real top of it, actually, where the cane is. Perhaps they're up there, but I'll have a look. Anyway, that's the badger thing. I can see droppings, and I can see the track very clearly, that it and deer and boar, of course, will use across the land. All right, Tilly, we need to walk some more. But before I move on, I just wanted to also say something about the butterflies, which are a big part of life here. Some woods have just gone past my nose, but I haven't seen so many of the swallowtails this year, which is a disappointment. We've left the fennel. We've seen an awful lot of hawk moth larvae around, actually, and seen a few hawk moths, which has been a delight. But things come and go, but this year's been quite a year for cardinal butterflies. I've seen so many of those whizzing about. Anyway, time to move on, and we'll talk some more at the top of the land. All right, Tilly, all right, good girl. You sit there for a minute. All this talk of badgers, it makes me think about Beatrix Potter as well. Didn't she, in the tale of Mr. Todd, actually didn't paint the badger in such a good light? I think it was a villain in that story. But hey, badgers have had a mixed notoriety of late, and there's been the culling, of course, going on in the UK and the TB fears, and very glad to say they've stopped that and are now seeking to inoculate and give vaccine to the creatures themselves. Well, we shall see how that goes. All right, Tilly, darling. I'm here with our very old girl, Tilly Twos, who's a terrier, who's not very sociable. You're part badger, are you? She doesn't get on with other dogs, but it wasn't her fault. She was out walking with some friends, and a big dog attacked her and rather scarred her on the flank, and she's had to have stitches and everything, but she's fully recovered and full of beans. and a very wild creature. She was born in a cave. Somebody saw, I think I've told you all this before, but someone saw the mother, heavily pregnant, scavenging for food, followed her back to a cave once they saw her again, obviously having had her pups, and there were 3 little ones, and we brought Tilly and her brother Ted home with us from the rescue centre. Dear Ted has passed, but Tilly's still going strong, aren't you, girl? Anyway, there is something else I want to share with you, which is plant-based, actually. The flora here is interesting. There's all manner of things going on, and first time we've ever seen it on the land, just popped up in the chicken run, bizarrely. A member of the nightshade family. It's called Jimson weed in America, or in other places thornapple, moonflower, I think, hell's bells, is that right? Devil's trumpet. Anyway, give it its Latin name. It's Datura I've written this down here. Hang on a minute. Datura stramonium. That's it. Thornapple, I think, is the most common name for it. But it looks like, well, it's a weed. But it's not a big plant. But it's got this extraordinary growth before flower, which looks a bit like a horse chestnut with quite strong spikes on it. And we've never seen that on the land before, to be honest. They say it originated from, perhaps you've seen it, you've got it on your land. I think it's quite invasive, but we've never had it here before. I think it came from Central America, my research I was doing, looking back over a few days ago. But it's now pretty much across Europe too. Quite toxic, but supposedly has hallucinatory qualities, not that I'm going there, and has been used by indigenous people to treat ailments and stuff. But it's such an extraordinary looking, the flower pod, and then it then gives this very beautiful, I suppose you'd call it, white pinwheel blossom bloom that's striking. We'll wait to see it flower before we think what to do next. But anyway, which brings me to something I have been fascinated by and want to tell you about. And it's a labour of love that one person in particular didn't get to see to fruition. And basically for yonks, I mean, we're going back about 40 years, I think. They being more than 250 botanists, working on putting all their work together, really, to basically describe, to research and define more than 6,000 species of plants here on the Iberian Peninsula, being Spain and Portugal. And they've been going at it nearly for 40 years, and what a stunning achievement. It's so significant because, to me, it underlines experts, people who are so dedicated to their science, and these people are extraordinary. And so I will be seeking to, I'll never afford to get it, really. I think it's 25 or whatever volumes. But I just I'm not wearing one, but I figuratively take my hat off to them, to literally take so much time and dedication to define that. And what's quite fascinating is of the 6,000 plus plants they've identified, more than 20% can only be found here on the Iberian Peninsula. That for me is such a work, a dedication, and all those things. And here's a bit of the story, the personality behind it, because one of the driving forces, or the driving force really, for this project, which began in 1982, patience, Tilly, patience, was the biologist Santiago Castroviejo, who was director of the Royal Botanical Gardens in Madrid. He never saw it to fruition. He died about 12 years ago, and he was only in his early 60s. In fact, he was 63, my age now. And so this Flora Iberica project continued after his death. And another key character involved, Pedro Montserrat, he passed away in 2017 when he was about to turn 99. And that leaves Jorge, I'm not going to pronounce this right, Paiva from Portugal, who's 88-ish now, I think, late 80s, who's been working on it as well. These guys, men and women, all of them, plant scholars who have laboured to produce this colossal piece of work. Now these experts, whether they're plants, whether they're into flora or fauna, who all over the world, who are scientifically keeping such record, don't seek limelight, just want the science to be recorded. Phenomenal. Anyway, on we go. I'm going to walk some more and we'll talk some more. Come on, Tilly, let's go. Good girl, good girl. Okay, Tilly, slow down now. Stop for a minute. Before I leave you, I'll tell you one of the good things about the first frost, which comes in mid-November, it tends to here in the mountains, is it will be an end to the plague of flies, to be honest. We've had not a good year there. But last night I was out, and this morning actually, quite early. I was out at dusk, but I was out early at first light, and the bats were tiny little bats. I'll try and research exactly which kind they are. Were whizzing about in the air, replacing obviously the house martins and the swallows and the swifts, which departed over the last few weeks. But be free of the insects really would be good. I try really hard, Maggie too, to reduce the amount of water that we hold around the house and around the gardens for irrigation because of the propensity for mosquito larvae and such like. And the main water reservoir has goldfish, of course, that keep that in check. But it's constant how quickly they evolve, and after only a few days, the water, fresh water into pots and buckets and everything, has evidence of mosquito larvae. Howsoever, we must make our way round the farm, Tilly, and back down to the house, and I will be back with you next week. If you've reached the end of this podcast without nodding off, I am giving you a standing ovation. And if you have nodded off and are now catching up the next day, well, I'm delighted if I was able to help you sleep. Look after your good selves and remain optimistic. If we all do our little bit, I'm sure the planet, we can make a monumental change to the fortunes of our world. So keep safe, and I will talk to you again very soon. All the very best. Bye-bye. Come on, twos, let's get up. Back to the house now, okay? Good girl.